We have the latest on the pandemic now. A big change in restrictions for the border is in force. So this is a live look at the border crossing in Fort Erie, Ontario. Fully vaccinated travelers from the U.S. are now able to come into Canada for the first time since the border was closed to non-essential travel a year and a half ago. But it's only one way. Canadians still can't cross land borders for non-essential trips to the U.S.
This applies to fully vaccinated Americans, and they have to have been vaccinated with one of the vaccines that's approved in Canada and have had all the required shots for that. They can not only enter Canada, but they also get to skip that 14-day quarantine, just like fully vaccinated Canadians can if they're travelling back into the country. A few other changes to walk you through here as well. These Americans travelling into Canada still need to get that negative test before arrival. They still need to use the ArriveCan app, which Canadians have been using to log their vaccine documents and other travel information. But instead of testing everyone once they arrive into the country, from today there'll be only random testing, and that's prompting some questions about whether people might slip through the gaps. We put that to the Canadian Border Services Agency.
For those who are vaccinated, who are arriving, they will no longer be subject to 100% testing. It'll be a mandatory random testing regime to ensure that we have a proper border surveillance program in terms of those who are entering, who are vaccinated, who may or may not be infected. And that will be done on a random basis. This surveillance program will allow us to be able to determine, based on the sampling of a pool size, what are the potential risks, if you will, that we need to be aware of in terms of travelers who've been vaccinated who may still be carrying COVID.
So, confidence there that they will be catching enough people through those tests prior to arriving, that they don't need everyone to be tested after arriving. A few more changes to walk you through as well. No more quarantine hotels for those arriving, including unvaccinated air travellers who will be allowed into the country, but they will have to do a 14-day quarantine. Not in a hotel, just wherever they've made this quarantine plan. They'll face extra testing as well. And in fact, from now on, children under 12 travelling with fully vaccinated parents will also be able to skip quarantine. Some differences for different ages of children as well. So 12 to 17, if they're unvaccinated, they still have to quarantine. A bit of a possibility of confusion around that, and possibly some confusion as well, because this is a one-way measure at the land border. Canadians still won't be able to cross into the US until at least August 21st. And of course, then we look ahead to next month when Canada plans to open up to the rest of the world as well, Asher.
The scenes are reminiscent of a time the U.S. thought it might never return to. Daily infections are topping 100,000. Community spread is now substantial to high everywhere, including all 11 border states.
It is, as we've said, a pandemic and an outbreak of the unvaccinated.
This latest wave has taken a devastating toll on the U.S. South, including Florida. Testing sites are once again bumper to bumper as the state breaks records for cases. There are so many people in hospital, elective surgeries are being postponed, with most public health measures to slow the spread, like masking and capacity limits, no longer in place.
I think we ought to use every public health tool we can when people are dying.
While large gatherings are helping to drive this surge, it's the unvaccinated who are the vector of Wave 4, as daily deaths spike to around 500, sparking discussions amongst EU nations that it might be time to shelve inbound American travel. The bloc lifted a ban in June as the U.S. appeared to be on a course of control. Non-essential travel could once again be cut off, a move that would see Canada one of the few nations welcoming Americans in as the country struggles to keep the virus out.
Now, the CDC is still advising against U.S. travel into Canada, but when it comes to allowing people across its borders, there's still no criteria. A vaccine mandate is in discussion, but it remains to be seen if the U.S. will require travelers to have received only FDA-approved vaccines. That could omit anyone with AstraZeneca or a mixed dose.
You know, some other people who are happy about this as well are folks who live in Point Roberts, Washington State. It's actually south of BC, on that tip of BC, but it's part of the United States, and they say they've felt trapped since the pandemic began. One resident telling us that the ability to travel into Canada now is like getting out of jail. So a lot happening today. In terms of how many people might come into Canada from the US, that remains unclear because summer is slowly drawing to a close. So there might not be so much travel, yet we are being told that people should prepare for delays at both borders and airports. Toronto's Pearson Airport telling us that it could take 3 hours or more to clear arrivals as of this change, Asher.